peaceful and beautiful and physical and angry all at the same time.
Were you idiot, your mind would cave in and your heart would explode within your chest.
This is going to be a shame.
Here we go!
What's happening, everybody? Welcome inside the TCA studio in beautiful Bytown, Canada. My day, less beautiful. 2:55 a.m. bedtime after a loss has left me dissatisfied with my morning after. But this should make up for it. Looking forward to having a great conversation with Canadian sports broadcasting legend Mark Hebscher, a name that I think most people associate, and maybe I'm wrong. I know certainly I associate with Sportsline back on Global TV every night, 11:30. I'm probably supposed to be asleep. I'm probably supposed to be in bed, but there's Jim Taddy and Mark Hebscher doing the thing. But if not, you maybe remember him if you're, here in Ottawa. I just found out the other day that he briefly had a run on the original OSR 1200 a pile of years ago with a bunch of years ago with JR and Lloydie. I had no idea, but also did radio in Montreal, talk radio in Toronto, was on Sportsnet for a while. Certainly a long run on CHCH TV out of Hamilton. He's been all over the place covering Canadian sports, and he's got a new book out. It's called Madness, The Rise and Ruin of Sports Media. We'll talk to him in just a second. If you missed it, on Friday, we had James Duthie on the podcast. That was a lot of fun, talking about his new book, Certified Beauties. And the Monday morning show, if you were kind of looking around for that, we dropped it Sunday afternoon. And that was just because of the baseball, right? Which has thrown our schedule off for weeks now. If we had waited and recorded and dropped an episode Monday morning, it would have been stale just hours later as the World Series started. So since we were going to be talking so much Blue Jays anyway, and there was the day off on Sunday, we just posted it as soon as it was ready with Steve Lloyd. So you can find that on Sunday if you've missed it. And later this week, we're going to talk to Andy Petrillo. She also has a new book out, Just Call Me Andy, kind of stories of her career journey and her life and some of the things that she's been through in covering the professional sports world as a woman. You know, the challenges of sexism and being judged that way and, held back at times and different things like that. So, look, it's quite a read. Lots of great stories from her career as well. It's not just about the challenges, obviously. It's about the successes she's had and the places she's been, and covering Olympics and covering the NHL and soccer and all these things. It's been a great read. I'm almost finished that one, and she'll be on the show either Thursday afternoon or Friday morning, depending on when I get that posted. So stick around for that one as well. But like I said, today we're here to talk to Mark Hebscher. His book is called Madness, The Rise and Ruin of Sports Media. And it's coming up right now on Tall Can Audio. Let's get right into it. Happy to welcome to the show a guy who needs no introduction if you've been a Canadian sports fan for any kind of length of time here. And he's got a new book out now. It is called Madness, The Rise and Ruin of Sports Media. Mark Hebscher, how are you today, sir?
Hey, Matt, how's it going?
Things are good up here in the nation's capital, man. Are you doing all right? I know it was a late night last night. You were up with the rest of us there watching the Jays.
Oh, man. And that's the topic of discussion today, right? And yeah, that was epic. I mean, you're going to go back, whether the Jays win or lose this World Series, I think you're going to say, remember that game? Where were you at? I know people that went to bed in the sixth inning, got up, and it was like the 14th.
Right.
They thought they were dreaming, right? And also some of the best chirps and the best cracks and some of the best writing was, late in that game where people are firing off, tweets and, and I mean, I was with a couple of buddies who were, in different parts of the world. Mm-hmm. And we're on this little chain, and just after every play, we're like, that's amazing. I can't believe that. What's going on? I'm going to bed. It was the 14th inning. Oh, I'm thinking to myself, by the 20th inning, maybe Sandy Koufax.
Right. Well, for me, yeah, I gave it a shot until about the 11th. And then I said, well, I'm going to watch the rest of this in bed. And then you start to slide down a little bit, and you start to, put your phone on Do Not Disturb after another inning or two. And then you're like, well, maybe if I just lay on my side and watch it. I did make it all the way to the end, but I was fading fast by the end for sure.
Yeah. I was surprised at how that I didn't fall asleep. I found it to be riveting, and I just love the drama of it. And it's the World Series, right? So, normally, my cat is up around 6 a.m, right? So
Yep.
I'll get up and feed the cat and do my business, go back to bed. But in this case here, just around 3 a.m. after, I was like, do I feed the cat now? And then maybe, I can sleep a few hours, or am I getting up in 2.5, 3 hours in the middle of a dead sleep to feed this cat? So I fed the cat at 3 a.m. The cat's like, what's going on here? What's
Yeah.
It upset the whole house. The timing of the entire house was turned on its axis because of that late game. I'm sure there's people just dragging it today.
100%. Yeah.
I hope the players aren't, but I can understand if they are.
100%. This show would be thrown off its axis if we didn't kick it off in the same place we always do. We like to have a pint here on the show with our guests. What have you brought to the table today?
I got I found this in the fridge, the downstairs fridge here in the studio. I didn't buy it, but it looked pretty good. And it's a triple bogey ultra premium light, 3.9% alcohol by volume.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not driving anywhere. So
Sure.
and there you go. And it's really good. It's really light.
Over here, I've got a couple of things that have been kicking around for a while. I want to keep moving through it. The listener has heard about it before, but our show celebrated an anniversary here in the spring, so we teamed up with a local brewery to put together our own dark IPA. It's called Beautiful Bytown Black IPA from the Nita Beer Company here in Ottawa. So that's what I'm going to ride with here for our little conversation.
Nice.
Yeah, I just learned something about you that it didn't make the book. Like I said to the good listener there, it's called Madness, the Rise and Ruin of Sports Media. We'll get into it here in a few minutes, but this didn't make the book. We had a good friend of our show in here on our previous edition, Steve Lloyd from TSN 1200. And he mentioned you guys briefly had a chance to work together. Your days in Ottawa, or at least working remotely for Ottawa, weren't in the book. So that's something new I learned about you. What can you tell us about your time working for the original OSR 1200 with Lloydie and JR?
Man, that's a long time ago. I haven't. I think JR is probably still mad at me for bailing out on that. It was like, it was a contract dispute between myself and somebody in management who I had a history with. And I just, it was, and I had 2 little kids at home, and it was like, I'm grinding it out. I was also working for The Score at the time on television and doing this radio thing. So I was coming to Ottawa every week and doing, I guess I would come, I'm trying to think, I think on a Thursday. So I would fly up on a Thursday. I would do the Thursday afternoon show with JR and Steve Lloyd, who at the time was known as Stick Boy. Okay? Because Steve would go to the Ottawa Senators training camp and the games and whatever, and he would get, clips from the players,
Sure.
coaches, whatever. He was part of the media scrum. And so, and then we had another reporter by the name of Mike Ross, who's now the PA and has been for years the PA announcer at the Scotiabank Arena. Mm-hmm. Rossi, right? And so he was Sweat Hog. So Steve Lloyd was Stick Boy and Rossi was Sweat Hog, and these guys would be, with their microphones and their tape recorders at the time and be getting clips and stuff like that. And I guess me and JR, I think it was, or it might have been Lance Pitlick too, actually, I think, who got involved in it and started calling them by nicknames. So we called them, I had a nickname, Hebscher, and JR was JR, John Rodenberg. And so we all had nicknames at the time. It was pretty funny, and it was a brand new station. It was just, it's, by the way, it's now called OSR 1200, Ottawa Senators, Ottawa Sports Radio.
Yep.
So it was, So to make a long story short, if that's possible now, I was in Ottawa a lot every week for, I don't know how long, 6-8 months, something like that. It got to be a real grind. And then I basically said, look, I got to have more money to do this. And they said, no. And I said, okay. And then I'm sure JR he was pissed because it was like, wait, we had this thing going. What the hell? And the other thing was like Hebscher drops into town, for a couple of days a week. And then, he had to sort of carry, do the heavy lifting the rest of the week, I guess, because I would do the show from the studio in Toronto. So I was on the show every day, but I was only in Ottawa 2 days a week.
Right. You could do it remotely over like a line there. Yeah.
Yeah. You're trying to connect with your listeners. People are going, can we get JR and Hebscher together doing a hot stove or this and that? It was hard. The travel and the back and forth kind of a thing like that. So it didn't work out. And like I said, I think I'm pretty sure that he's like, this son of a bitch. The hell with him.
Yeah.
So Stick Boy. So you never heard the story of Stick Boy and Sweat Hog?
Somehow Sweat Hog sounds familiar, but Lloydie neglected to mention his nickname was Stick Boy. Funny how that happens.
He might have been Sweat Hog and Rossi might have been Stick Boy. I think they might have been interchangeable.
Okay.
Lance would have been Lance Pitlick and probably Ron Tugnut too.
Okay, yeah. So there's some throwback names for you.
Yeah, in the locker room, there were certain guys in the locker room that would, could chirp pretty good.
Sure. I'm curious to get your take on, just to stay on the Blue Jays for a second there. It's one of those things, and you mentioned this in the book, the way that coverage kind of has been chipped away at and the way it's been shifted. And I've been surprised with how much Rogers has invested in the Blue Jays, owning the team, owning the network, owning the stadium, the renovations and everything. If a team in Boston was in the World Series or in New York, you would see, I won't say all day coverage, but there would be afternoon updates on those channels about, what happened last night and who we're going to see today and things like that. And it seems like there's been almost no change for Sportsnet other than adding a half hour to the pregame show. Like, we're still getting whatever highlights of the week or whatever all afternoon and, once connected. Like, are you surprised that they didn't take this opportunity to do a little more? They've sent all their people out there to LA anyway. Or is this just kind of what Canadian sports fans are going to get now?
Yeah, I think it's what they're going to get, because no longer does the media dictate what's going to happen, how this works. I mean, if you're a rights holder, that's where all the money is. And of course you have to bow to the rights holders. And if you combine that with the gambling companies that are infusing millions of dollars, and of course now every play, you have to have the odds. There has to be odds on how this is going to happen. It's become part of the lexicon. It's just so different. But I completely understand it. You're chasing the buck. It's a business. It's always been a business, right? We love the people, the owners of sports teams that didn't treat it like a business. They treated it like they loved their team.
Sure.
Right? And then the ones that did do it for business, there's like, yeah, we're going to get the high price players so we can make more money, charge more money for tickets, blah, 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 blah. And we're going to be, everyone's going to be a billionaire. And sort of lost in all of that is the competition of it all, the drama of what's going to happen in this game, right? If you break it down to, everyone's, it's not so much about the gambling of what's going to happen in the game. And I think we've lost that. I think a lot of people that are following sports now, they don't care what happens so much, the great moments of the game. They care about winning their bet.
Right.
People, so it's like, who do you like in the game tonight? I don't care as long as so-and-so is under 5.5. That's a common refrain.
Unlike last night's game that went over 5.5 hours. I wonder what the odds on that were.
Yeah. But I'm sure you could have made a bet. I'm sure there was a place where you could have made a bet, right? In some prop somewhere as to the length of the game. Just the same way it's like length of how long is the national anthem going to take. So you can make a bet on everything. And I think that's done is it's sort of superseded the thrill of actual competition to see who ends up being the victor, which to me is what sports should be all about. You're not going to have a competition. Someone has to win.
Yeah.
Right? There's no second prize. There's no second place for, being noble enough to, when they said about George Chuvalo, the great boxer, he was never knocked off his feet. Okay, he got he got pummeled a lot, but he was never actually knocked off. That was a big deal. It doesn't mean, it's like saying to someone that's not an attractive person, oh, but what a great sense of humor that
sure
a backhanded compliment, right?
Thanks for that.
So now the fact that Sportsnet owns and Rogers owns all of this, they are the ones who dictate what goes out to their fans, to their followers. They dictate it, and the players dictate what's going to go on their Instagram and what they're going to produce. So instead of the media asking questions, right, the teams and the players come out with their own statements in advance. The PR department asks the question to the players.
Sure.
Right? Or there's this, I don't want to say a stooge because that's the wrong word, someone doing their job in the media who basically is sort of elected to be ask the questions. They get the ball rolling. Let's ask positive stuff. And anything that negative comes along, if they get the feeling that the player kind of gets caught off guard or doesn't want to answer the question, maybe the Mitch Marner years, then they go, and we kind of let it go. Whereas it used to be, you could ask a question and ask a follow-up question, take a guy aside, do a personal one-on-one, and really extract some good information. But when there's a whole bunch of people and it's all sort of set up, he's not going to answer that question. Well, can you bring John Tavares out? John's not answering questions tonight.
Right.
Why not? Used to be, go up to John, okay, yep, I'm here. I turn around at my locker, I'm answering questions. You can't do that anymore. So who's making that message? Who's telling the audience what's right and what's wrong? Where's the audience? Where do the fans get their information from? They're getting it from the team. So it's going to be sanitized.
And I think we're getting into a spot that will be more and more. The more and more these teams can bring their broadcasts and their press conferences and everything in-house, you will see that. And that is a subject that you cover in the book. And I was fascinated by the structure of the book. I think it was really well put together in the sense that it sort of weaves in and out. Like, it is your stories, your journey, your career, and there are some outrageous stories in there and some big laughs and some things I absolutely had no idea about. And it's woven into sort of the evolution of how radio used to come together to broadcast sports first and then television. Like, you learn some things along the way, and then we get to the streaming era and how things are being split up into billion-dollar blocks, and you got Amazon with this chunk of it and Netflix with that chunk of it. And it's sort of a really cool way to tell your story, but with the story of the evolution and perhaps the de-evolution of sports media right now. I'm just sort of curious how long this had been on your mind and how you decided to put it together that way, that I don't want to do just the history of sports media, or I don't want to tell just my story. I think I can weave these things together.
Yeah, I love history. Love it. I'm interested in how things evolved. And when it comes to sports, I'm super interested. And I would consider myself to be a notable sports historian in that, not that I was there at the time for all of these events. However, I did read about many of the events and the people involved in early sports, right? Mm-hmm. I have that knowledge because I loved reading about sports. I loved, gaining as much information as possible. And I'm talking about all sports. I'm talking about Olympics and all Olympic events. I'm talking about college football from the times of John Heisman. I wrote a previous book called The Greatest Athlete You've Never Heard Of. And it's about Canada's first Olympic champion, a fellow named George Orton, who they thought was an American for 100 years because he went to the University of Pennsylvania and whole story. So all part of that was sort of like, I need to make sure that history is correct in that regard with that story. But also, I got some knowledge about Red Grange, Babe Ruth, and the eras of sports and the coverage of sports and how people became fans and how now it's crazy how many people are sports fans. It's great. You could look at someone on the street and go, there's no way, and find out that person's a Green Bay Packer fanatic. Sure. Right? Or that guy there from Real Madrid, wait a second, you live in the Philippines. And in the book, I detail that the people at Real Madrid had no idea. They partnered with Microsoft to find out where all their fans were. And they found out that a large percentage of them are in Manila, the Philippines. And they had no idea. How would they have known? And so this type of technology that allows you to go right to your fans, right to them, and then feed them the information that you want to give them about players, about the club, all positive stuff that builds your brand. You're not going to allow journalists in there to tell the story, the secret story behind the scenes with the coach, and the problems that he had with one of the players. You'll never get that. It's all positive stuff. And that's the message that we're sending out. Now, that's not media, but it's perceived to be, right? You're an insider. Mm-hmm. And to me, an insider is someone that's working for the team. You know what I mean?
Sure. At this point, yeah, everybody, one of the sort of arcs in the story that you talk about is sort of the early days of running around in different roles at at Exhibition Stadium covering the Blue Jays. And there's some interesting notes and stories, not just about your own journeys in that world, but what the team's going through and how Exhibition Stadium was set up for broadcasting, and little notes like that. Same thing down at the Garden and the days of Harold Ballard, and how you move your way up and you start to build these relationships and things like that. Can you sort of take us inside of what the code would have looked like back then for this idea of, okay, this is something my listeners or my viewers or readers need to know about the team, and this is important and this is worth telling. And the other side of it being, this is boys being boys on the road. I'm not going to bother telling that story. It's just embarrassing to somebody, and it's really not relevant. Like, how do you walk that line, and how was it done sort of back in those earlier days, the 80s and the 90s? And
it's a difficult tightrope to walk. I'm not sure anyone can fully explain, the potential for partiality is what I'll say. And you can take that's a human condition. You can take it to today with gambling. Some people are more susceptible. They want to take the risk. They're going to do something gambling. Some players think that there's information that they have that makes them, gives them inside information, and that gamblers want that information to make money. So there's a lot of it's driven that way. But I just think that high elite athletes, for example, think that male athletes especially think that they know more than the average person. Let's just put it that way. I think the gambling companies feed on that. And I think that there's, ripe for corruption. And so when I was in the business, there was a code, and the code was, like you say, you don't need to be writing about people's transgressions and all that, because you got to face these people in the locker room or on the team planes or whatever. And, but they're, the real brave ones, the ones that wanted to get the truth out to the readers, the newspaper men, that's what they did. And sometimes if it got a little bit too much, then the newspaper editor might get a phone call from the owner of the team, or the coach saying, look, this guy keeps it up. We're going to restrict access. We're going to make it difficult for him. And then the editor goes to the writer and says, look, you got to back off. And the guy says, yeah, but that's the truth. That's what's going on back there. This is right. Mm-hmm. So imagine how many scandals, imagine how many stories were put to bed, never saw the light of day because of the fact that there was pressure put from the team. Well, Harold Ballard would do stuff like that. And by the same token, he had favorite sports writers, favorite people that he would call and say, I got a story for you. And they leapt at the chance because it sold more newspapers. Right. And so, and maybe this particular writer had also ghostwritten a book for the guy. And,
sure.
Right. And here's free booze for you. And hey, we're going on a trip with the family. I'm sure there was all kinds of stuff like that. But that's the way they operated. They got free publicity in the newspapers. And in return, they made life a little easier. And the editors loved it because the editors had all this content, this great content. And so that's how those relationships were. As a reporter, you could only get so deep before somebody's going to come along and get rid of you. Get out of here. Not your business. So a lot of the things that I found out about Harold Ballard and the Leaf era, I found out after he had passed away.
Right.
And had I done my digging, or had the opportunity to, man, I would have uncovered oh my God. If those stories would have broken while he was still alive and running the gardens and the Leafs, oh my God. Because remember, after he passed away, that's when the stories came out about the sexual abuse and just the wildness going on. And that's when things clicked into me as a reporter going, wait a minute, did I not see this before? Was I blind to some of this stuff? I must have known something was going on. Or did I just, not my business, not something I'm going to pursue because as a reporter, it's not going to do me any good, not going to advance my career, probably get me into trouble, maybe banned from the press box. And that's what eventually happened. I said stuff on my talk show, on my radio show, that he didn't like, and he couldn't suppress me, so he had me banned from the press box, which was an honor. It meant that I was doing my job. I was getting the truth out to people. I wasn't just, saying what they wanted me to say. And plus the other thing was my listeners know that, that I would be a phony. If I would say, oh, no, everything's fine with Daryl Sittler and the Maple Leafs, no problems at all. No, they would know that that's not me.
Right.
So I had some credibility there and the reason is that I grew up a diehard Maple Leaf fan. And when I joined the media, I had to put that aside. Mm-hmm. I had to look at it on a completely different level. And it was difficult, but that's your job. So you become more of a critic now. You're a critic when you're a fan. You're entitled to be. You love the team. But now you're a different type of critic. You're in the media, and you're pointing out shortcomings of players, of management. Different story.
I'm curious, the old adage, if that's the right word, it's not, but like one of the theories that always sort of I've heard thrown around was that columnists had the ability to, and maybe it would be similar for radio talk show hosts who never planned to go down to, the locker room for the Sens or the Leafs or the Jays or whatever it was going to be, that if you were going to sit there comfortably and write your once a week column and didn't care about ever being granted access to the locker room or whatever, it was really easy to sling arrows, but you could bury your own reporter, the beat reporter who does have to go in there and maybe works for the same publication, and you can complicate his life. Like, I think there's a lot of politics that go into this behind the scenes that most of us aren't aware of until we get a chance to read something like what you've just put together, and the curtain gets pulled back a little bit.
Yeah. It's interesting to look back at how the team was covered, right? And, it should have been, if it was today, it would never be that way. You can make those comparisons about everything. It's not just about sports. That's life. Mm-hmm. Things have changed, right? Policies have changed. You can just tell by the way people treat each other compared to years gone by, where being polite, respecting your elders, all those things. Every generation it changes, and maybe more drastically than we had hoped. And so, it's hard to sort of look back and say, what was going on back in there? How many newspaper reporters did we have? How many radio reporters did we have? How many TV reporters? How much investigative sports reporting was there? And that's when you get into, once that began, that's when the teams were like, hey, these guys are adversaries. They used to be our friends. The media was our friends before. They'd get the good stories out there about the team with color pictures and the paper. It was beautiful, right? Now there's some pushback, and I detailed in the book things like The Wide World of Sports, Howard Cosell, Sports Illustrated, where real journalism now comes along and uncovers some things in sports that we had never heard about before. And our eyes are now open to racial problems, gender issues, inequality in sports. All these issues that we didn't know about this when we were watching the games. We were fans of the teams.
Well, the biggest one example here in Canada, obviously, right now would be Rick Westhead. Like, who knows if we ever find out about the Hockey Canada stuff or, some of the other things, if he doesn't go against the grain and dig into these things. It's so rare now.
Yeah, and fortunately is that you've got the backing of, I guess it was the Toronto Star and TSN for a while. And I don't know if he's writing for the Star or strictly tsn.ca, but anyway, an excellent journalist. But there's different types of, all journalism is investigative. That's what journalism is. Mm-hmm. You're doing your research, you're getting your sources, you're putting a story together that is true and balanced, and that's journalism, right? You're finding the truth. But this idea of investigative journalism means there is a division, there is hopefully a number of people, then their job is strictly to do the research and find out and dig deeper than anyone else can. You need resources for that, and media companies are not spending that money at all. They're just not.
Especially
the same way they're not sending crews on the road for radio, because these are unimportant things to them. And a way to save
that's
money.
A sore subject here in the nation's capital right now. For the first time ever, Dean Brown and Gord Wilson are not traveling with the team to do radio this year. It's just started, and people are a little sour about it. Those were guys who had access to the team and were at oftentimes, the media covering the Sens has shrunk quite a bit, just like every other market. Those were sometimes the only guys there with boots on the ground at these games, and now they're gone too.
Right. And so now the people that are covering the Ottawa Senators, is there an not investigative, but is there a reporter that's not, quote unquote, on the team payroll kind of thing, or no?
Well, it's a small market, right? Like, there are a few covering it who aren't on the payroll, but who still need the access, right? I would say,
like Garriock, you mean?
Yeah, Garriock is
but he's been there for years. He's been there for 40 years or whatever, right? Or 30. Yeah, he was there when I was at OSR. And Dean and Gordy, that's 30 years.
Sure. There is a new young guy. His name's Julian McKenzie for The Athletic. He's at a bit of an arm's length from the team, but so he's doing a nice job.
In the book, I talk about Ian Mendez, right?
Yeah.
Being one of many former sports journalists, right?
Yep.
Who went to the dark side. now works for the team. Now works for the team that he used to cover and have to be objective about. Mm-hmm. And certainly wrote and said things that might have been controversial or against the what the team would have liked to have said, and now he works for them.
Yeah, it definitely thins out the coverage, and I'm curious, to circle back to the book, like I said to the good listener, it's called Madness, The Rise and Ruin of Sports Media. When you're telling some of these stories, and some of them are just hilarious, is there a point, or is there, a story or two, and I don't expect you to tell them now, but that you have to leave out, or that you go to somebody and say, hey, heads up, I'm going to put this in there, and they ask you not to? I think of one story where you're down at Penn State University and your poor cameraman's passed out drunk when he's supposed to be working, and, some stuff
no,
like...
I didn't talk to the cameraman about that. No, you know what it is? You can't, all you have to know is this, is that you can get charged with slander or libel, but if you're telling the truth, it's going to be very difficult for someone to prove that what you did or said was slanderous or libelous.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I say that because on many occasions over my broadcasting career, I was threatened with libel, the spoken word, or slander, the spoken word, and libel, the printed word, I believe. So I'm like, that's why you got to have lawyers working for big companies. And so to me, it's like if this is the truth, then I can write it.
Mm-hmm.
If someone wants to come along and say, hey, that never happened. But I didn't write anything in the book that was like, where I claimed somebody had fathered a child.
No, this was just embarrassing.
Yeah. But at the same time, as you know, I mentioned a particular boss that I had, and I don't mention this person by name.
Right.
Not even their initials. And anyone that worked with me and worked there knows who this person was. And knows the misery that I went through. And I felt that was, justified, because it gave you an idea, especially if you're someone who I consider myself to be creative. And for your boss, your immediate boss, to stifle your creativity and basically tell you that you're not worth the position you've attained, the money you're making, whatever. Mm-hmm. Is just the biggest bummer. Like, why would you want to work in an environment like that? And so, people on the outside go, oh, what a great gig that was. Must have been fabulous. You got to go to all the games for free and travel and blah, blah. You say, well, if you want to know the truth, it's in the book. But it's great for a little while. And then when the shine wears off, it's a job. Right?
Sure.
And you're at the mercy of a sports team. If you're at the mercy of their schedule, their travel schedule, their practice schedule. I don't care if you've got a newborn and another one on the way. I don't care. Right? This is the way we operate. And you want to be part of this, fine. And now it's becoming less and less because the people who are covering the team stay home. They watch the games on TV. They get their quotes from, whatever sources. They mm-hmm. build a story. They never see the players in person, right?
Yep.
And they're feeding this out to a public that's like going, well, you're not telling me anything I don't know already. I watched the game on TV as well. So that inside stuff, that locker room stuff, is all curated and put together by the team and sent out there by the team's mouthpieces, for lack of a better word. Journalists who have a job to do, and their job is to not rock the boat, get that information out. Don't make it too controversial. Don't make the team look bad, because you're going to be covering this team. And if you don't want to do it that way, we'll find someone that does.
One of the other things here that you mentioned, now that we are knee deep or waist deep into the streaming era, is the number of different packages that, whether you're in Canada or the US, that you need to have certain NFL games. The Christmas game is on Netflix, and, Thursday night games are on Amazon Prime, and you still need your cable because there's going to be games all day on Sunday. Here in Canada, you've got Amazon Prime with NHL rights now. The Zone if you're like a boxing or a soccer fan, and it adds up and up and up. And I think one of the things is that you stack on top of that makes people crazy is the idea still in 2025 of regional blackouts. And I'm curious, based on your experience and the way you've watched this go, the big thing that I know I would subscribe to, and that I know a lot of people are calling out for. Let's say you're a hockey fan and you're a Leaf fan like me who lives in Ottawa, or you're a Montreal fan in Winnipeg, or whatever it might be. And I don't want to be screwing around with regional blackouts and 14 different platforms and Sportsnet this and whatever else. Can you just give me something from the league that is, just tell me what it costs to give me every game, and I'll decide then whether I want to pay it or not, but it won't be based on regional lockouts or blackouts. It won't be based on different streaming, this or that I can exempt from this. It used to be kind of like that with NHL Center Ice on TV, and there was a streaming version, but even that had its moments where it would be blacked out regionally. Do you think we can ever get to a point where a league will just sell directly to the fan? Here's what it costs for the year to get everything. Or is there too much money to be made with all these extra companies that they're going to constantly force you to be all over the place?
Yeah, I think the latter. I think that what's going to happen is then you're probably looking at a 10-year span where this competition for live sports rights is going to just be wild. And you're going to have to know what carrier has your favorite sport and what packages they offer. And I've got to believe that the carriers understand their fans. You're a fan of the Ottawa Senators. You want to see every single Ottawa Senators game. We'll provide that. Here's how much it costs.
Right.
But it's going to take time, because how much longer are regional sports networks going to be paying these exorbitant fees?
Yeah.
And then, like, what else? Like you had said before, what else are they running?
Well, this is it. Throughout the day, it's just darts and poker and it's
right. So what's the reason to tune into Sportsnet at any other time of the day except for the live sports?
This is it.
And the shows, maybe the pre and post game shows,
sure.
And Sportsnet Central, to get your sports news, which you can get at any time probably. But that's fine. That's for the old style. But beyond that, why are you tuning in? So now this channel has to operate 24 hours a day and run, 6 straight hours of Sportsnet Central repeats in the morning, and there are plays of the misplays and blah, 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 and all that kind of thing, because people want to watch the live event. That's all it is. Anything else they can get at any particular time. And so that's got to be a challenge. What's going to happen to regional sports networks? You can see what's happening in the States already. Bally Sports Network and all these regional networks have been gobbled up.
Yep.
FanDuel, it's now the FanDuel Sports Network.
Yeah.
Well, you know where we're going now. And you know what the commentators are going to sound like now. Hey, it's FanDuel Sports Network, and the play-by-play is secondary. Let's get those odds in there because you want to get people betting. So it's a whole different ballgame. And the rights are ridiculously high. So much so that, Amazon's like, let's dip our toe in, and Netflix, let's dip our toe in. Oh, Apple TV, let's do MLS. And you got to know. You got to know what league is on what. And the other thing is that it just makes for a wild, I have to go onto the internet to find out, who's running League Cup.
Sure.
Right? I got to see, because this is another competition and I don't know who the carrier is, or I'm not up on the rights. Is it TNT? Is it TBS? Did they lose out to ESPN? And is it DAZN Canada, which is different? Is it FUBO? So you're right. That's got to find a way to settle itself. But I think the first thing that's going to go, maybe not in Canada because Rogers controls so much, but in the States for sure, those regional sports networks are going to be gone. They're going to be gone. You're going to get your games, like you say, off a streaming service from the team, directly from the team.
Yep. Where no one will ever criticize the team.
Yeah, and that's right. You're not going to get a balanced, kind of, you're not. I mean, on the fan radio, Jeff Blair and Kevin Barker, they're talk show hosts, man.
Yeah.
They're going they're going at it. They know their stuff, and they're controversial. That's their thing. But, some of the other ones, man, maybe not so much. Sure. Morning shows are a little easier going, not calling for the firing of a coach. You don't do those kind of things when the team owns the station and you see all of your friends in broadcasting have lost their jobs. Why did they lose their job? Maybe they didn't want to toe the company line. They didn't want to become shills for gambling companies. They
Yeah.
Ken Reed's a buddy of mine. He works at Sportsnet. I haven't asked him, but I'm pretty sure that he's not crazy about doing some of these commercials. They're running in the middle of the show where people are supposed to, view him as a sports authority, as a, funny guy too, but a guy that knows his stuff, not a pitch man. But that's the way things go today. You think Jamie Campbell likes talking about whatever it is, MGM or bet? No, but this is the way. And the perception from a lot of people that I know is, we must be being paid by the company.
No.
The company must be paying him, or the company must have opened an account for him with X thousand gambling dollars, right? No money changes hands, but you're a VIP member of whatever the betting company is. And here you go. Here's, $5,000, $10,000. What does it matter to them? So, that perception and the idea that this game could be fixed or that guy could maybe not be giving his all or,
We
you
just
don't
saw
have to
last
win
week
by-
with the Chauncey Billups thing. Like all of a sudden, that
Holy
has
cow.
rocked the NBA, right? Like as soon as there is any hint of this not being on the level, you'll see things unravel fast, right? Fans lose confidence. Nobody wants to gamble on something they think is already, maybe the fix is in on. Like they have got themselves into a mess, and I am certain they are just the one that's out in the spotlight right now, that these things are happening in all these leagues right now.
Matt, when I was writing the book, actually, wait a second. Yeah, I was writing the book, and I'm thinking to myself, when this is published in the fall, like now, I'm wondering how, if what I'm writing about here is going to be obsolete. Like, it's like, will have exploded. And so when I heard about the Chauncey Billups one, I said, oh my God, the timing is perfect because there's so much about the evils of gambling and where sports media is going and, association with gamblers and my gambling past and my family's gambling past and all that kind of stuff, right? Just how prevalent it is, pervasive it is in sports and has been for years before the Black Sox scandal, right? All of this stuff. It's kind of part of it and, kind of the dirty truth of it. But you're right. When the public thinks that they're being taken advantage of, when fraud is being committed on the public, now you got yourself a problem. And the NBA opened this whole thing, and I documented in the book, where he wrote an open letter saying maybe it's time for the NBA to embrace sports gambling so we can regulate it. That was the famous line by Adam Silver. Maybe it's time, right? Because the first scandal with the official,
Mark Donaghy,
Donaghy. Can you imagine if we found out that one of the NHL referees, one of the big names, for years has been with gamblers. He owed money from a gambling debt or whatever it was. He had inside information. He could make the call. Penalty, no penalty.
Well,
right?
And how often, like every
that call.
fan thinks the ref is out to get their team. Like that's universal across sports. As soon as you can give a little bit of credibility to that, to your average angry fan, and he finds out that, this guy was on the take with the mob or whatever else, it's over. It's game over. Like you've lost the fans. It's pro wrestling now.
Right. So if you're an NHL official, and let's say you like to gamble, like everybody,
sure,
you buy a lottery ticket, you play bingo, right?
Yep.
And now you go in and you buy a sports. You don't buy. What am I saying? You go online. You go on your thing. Maybe it's not even under your name. Like with Shane Pinto, the way I understand it with Shane Pinto was he had a friend betting for him, right?
Yeah, back in the U.S. for him. Yeah,
back in the U.S., right? But he was linked to the account
yes.
anyway. So you got to be super careful because just the perception that somebody might be tanking, right? And it happens in the NBA, it happens in the NHL. We want the first draft pick. We want the lottery pick. So, it's kind of inherent.
Yeah.
That's the sad part of it. So I watch sports for the love of the sport. I'm rooting for a team. I'm rooting for a team to lose maybe. I'm rooting for a certain player. But I want a game that's on the up and up, fair and balanced competition, right? Rules abided by. Let's go. I don't care what the sport is. I don't care if it's tiddlywinks. Give me a good competition. You've played tennis before.
Sure.
Doesn't matter. Golf. Give me a friendly, but a good competition, right?
Yep.
May the best person win, and let's go on fair rules. But you're telling me you're cheating? What? You're using a club that's not in golf? Are you using equipment that's against the rules? And I remember in Grand Prix racing, when they discovered some of these ground effects were illegal, an eighth of an inch of a crank of a turn, and all of a sudden, boom, it's illegal. Like all this type of stuff. Why? Because you're cheating to try to win.
Yep. Changes the whole thing.
Now, so if you're a sports journalist and you're covering a team and you say to yourself, if I write what I really want to write, I'm not going to be around for that much longer. They're going to find a way, right?
Yeah.
They're going to call my bosses. They're going to whatever. I'm not going to get the access I need.
Well, and there's pressure from all sides of it, right? Because there are still thousands of people who want your job. So someone's pressuring to push you out, and your boss knows I can find the next guy right behind him, right? Like, and probably pay him less. And like, it's tough now to hold the line, the journalistic integrity.
Right. So now what I'm saying is that Dean Brown and Gordy Wilson, okay, veterans so associated with the Ottawa Senators, not even funny in the Ottawa market, are now saying to themselves, looking and going, what's next? Because they saw what happened with Joe Bowen and Jim Ralph years and years ago. You're not going on the road, not even for the playoffs. And so you see that, and you look at your broadcasting career, and you say, what else can I do? Or here's what's happened to my friends, podcast, whatever, some unfortunate endings, right? Sad to see, but happens in every business. But I guess in this sports broadcasting business, sports journalism business of ours, it hits home more because these are friends of yours. And here's what they're looking at. They're looking at getting old, sure, being replaced by somebody younger, cheaper, who doesn't mind sitting in the studio instead of going on the road 40 games a year. And is okay with this. So I can't see everything that's going on. I can still call a game and make it sound professionally like I'm there. And that's really what it's come down to. It's the faking. It's like the days of recreation in radio. You're not at the event. You can see what's going on, but you have to transmit that via audio to your listener who isn't there.
Yep.
And isn't watching it. And so that's a totally different ballgame than going on the road, talking to the guys. I talk in many airport lounges and waiting for planes and even on planes. I had wonderful conversations with a lot of the athletes that I covered, off the record stuff.
Sure. How's the family, or where are you from? And
everything.
Yeah.
I remember talking with Felix Potvin. We were both F1 fans, and we just went on gabbing about like the silliest, most trivial things about Formula One racing. I told him I was had been friends with Gilles Villeneuve. He was like, "Come on," and just stuff like that you're never going to get now. You're just never going to get from the athlete. And a lot of times it clouded your opinion. Maybe like if you wanted to say something nasty about the person, you'd maybe hold back because you liked them personally. But bottom line was, when they got traded, man, Eddie Olczyk was crying the day he got traded from the Leafs to Winnipeg. He called me at home. Remember, I had one of my kids, an infant in one arm. We were doing renovations. I was like, I hadn't gotten any sleep. And here's that Olczyk saying, I got traded to Winnipeg. Right? So,
was it the fact that he got traded, or that it had to be to Winnipeg?
He loved it in Toronto, man.
Yeah.
He his broadcasting career kind of started. He was a really good interview. He never turned down an interview, never met a microphone he didn't like. Very glib, good storyteller, and off the record, a fabulous storyteller. He says, listen, you didn't hear this from me, but John Brophy, and he had some fabulous stories. So he was on his way to being a broadcaster. But at the same time, he was like a good, he was critical, but he would back it up with, like fact. Right? He had credibility as a former player. And, and said, he didn't come out and say, look, when I played, blah, blah, blah. But you knew when he spoke, he knew what he was talking about. It's got to be shorter shifts. I remember him saying, it's got to be shorter shifts. Our shifts are way too long. I'm like, did you tell John Brophy that? He goes, hell no. It's not my place. Okay. He'd want to come off the ice. He'd say, stay out there. Go get him, right?
Yeah.
That kind of a thing. So, those are the types of things reporters are not going to get now. They're not going to get. If the player is playful and enjoys social media, maybe, and, and there's lots of them now, and doesn't mind, telling some stories out of school or, some fun stuff about them. I like that. David Schneider said to Addison Barger, come sleep on my couch. That's a good story. That's
sure.
Good. Right?
Yeah, no, and it made the team more endearing.
David Schneider's sister is on Twitter, on X, and she's saying, oh, he slept on the couch again last night. So now you've got an informant. You got somebody inside, not a reporter, just a family member that's giving you great stuff.
And it's that sort of story. It's not hard-hitting journalism, but it's endearing, right? It makes the fans like it. They're like, that guy's just like me, and these guys are all buddies, and look at this great team and how much fun they have together, and it's a close clubhouse, all of that stuff. It's just fun to get that window, and we're going to get it less and less. And these are the sorts of insights that are prevalent throughout the book, plus some crazy stuff. You've got the story of Babe Ruth in Toronto and the early days of trying to communicate what that was like through early sports journalism, how you were part of, before the New England Patriots ever had the big Spygate, there was a Canadian Spygate through the NFL. We got Stanley Cup banners catching motor oil in somebody's boathouse. These are just tremendous stories from a career of gathering information and reporting to the public. And a lot of it I'm hearing for the first time. Like I said, I love the way the book is structured, sort of weaving some education and some insight and some prediction into your own stories, your own journeys. It's a terrific read. Tell the people, where they can get it, when it's coming out.
Yeah, it's coming out November the 4th, and you can pre-order it from anywhere fine books and audio books are sold. That's the official release date, not the 4th of November, but you can pre-order it. So Amazon and Barnes & Noble and Indigo, Chapters. And I'm sure there's going to be copies in your local library because, that's what they do.
Sure.
Oh, there's a good book. We got it. The library, buys a couple of copies or whatever it is.
Sure.
And so there's that way as well. And I appreciate it, Matt, because it was fun to do. And a lot of the stories didn't get in there. Some had some stuff that's no point telling that story and not going to do me any good. And there's other ones too where it's like, I'm glad that you say, oh, I didn't know that before, because really that's the idea with the stories. You may not know this, and this is what happened. And my observations of them, and just my love of sports media and the history of sports media and how, it intersected with, great athletes and great moments and how we responded to those moments over the years. I wasn't around in the radio only era, but I do remember that when I was a kid, really young, my parents listening to games on the radio because we didn't have a television.
Right.
And just how magical that was, And even, sometimes nowadays, maybe you're in the other room in the TV and you go to run in to see, you hear that sound. And you run in to catch the TV. Somebody just hit one out or someone had just scored.
I remember my dad telling me, who's sort of a casual sports fan. He's not as, married to it as you and I are. But him saying to me once that he loved games that Bob Cole called because you could tell from the sound of Bob's voice from the living room when you went to get a beer, do I got a minute or do I need to get back right now? Like something's happening, right? Like that sort of brilliance of a great broadcaster.
Right. It's so interesting that you mentioned that because that to be able to have an imagination and to have someone fill that in for you, vision, to let you know what they're seeing so that you can put your own thoughts and sights to it, right? It's really, I think it's good for you to have that. To be able to see everything is great. It's wonderful and all that. But, how many different angles can you show? And how many times can a commentator say, okay, right there, that black thing, that's the puck, and that red thing, that's the line. And I know. But if I hear a pause on radio, I'm like, okay, what's going on? Mm-hmm. And I hear some cheering or I hear some roaring. I'm okay, right?
Yep.
What's going on? And now I hear an announcer going back and back. I'm like, right? But if I'm watching it, it's different. It's completely different. I can see exactly what's going on. Looking at the outfielder to see if the outfielder's looking up or he looks like he's going to be camped under it. But so a great announcer on radio, I think, is so much more important than a great announcer on television, which, as you know, a lot of times you're listening and you're not even sure who's doing the play calling.
Sure.
You can pretty much see it, right? Mm-hmm. And I'll be honest with you, and I've done play-by-play. It's not that hard to do play-by-play. You just have to memorize the numbers of the players, but also the way they look, the way they run or skate or the kind of equipment. There's a lot of different ways to tell. And you've seen enough plays in any sport to know that's a pass, that's a run, that's a hit, right?
Sure.
So the most difficult thing, but making it sound interesting to someone who can't hear it, can't see it, is different than filling in, putting some words to pictures that everyone can already see and sounds that they can pretty much already hear.
100%.
So that's why Foster Hewitt was a terrible television announcer. He was behind the play. When he called the play-by-play of radio, he wasn't directly on it. He scored came a beat and a half after the puck had entered the net.
You had the time. Yeah.
And that's because back in the day, there wasn't a right and wrong way to do things. You thought about it before you told your audience what had just happened.
Sure.
And then it evolved into, wait a minute, just call it the way you see it. So when television came and they first saw Foster Hewitt in the game, they said, geez, he's behind the play. The puck's already in the net. He's going to shoot these cards. Right. And basically it was, okay, Foster, why don't you go back to radio and you'll pick the 3 stars and you'll be like a commentator, but you're not doing the play-by-play. Let your son do that.
When we all got exposed to that a little bit again during the pandemic, when so many like the Blue Jays would simulcast the baseball or the TV and the radio broadcast.
I hated that.
They're two very different gigs. If you're listening on radio, you need more. I need more description from you than what you're used to giving as a TV broadcaster, or vice versa. If a radio guy is in the TV booth for that day, I like you said, I know, I can see this, right? You don't have to quite give me all the information you're used to giving me. And so there is no way to simulcast a TV and radio broadcast and have it work for both audiences.
Not at all. And look, we're used to hearing good, like there's some really good broadcasters out there that are so good. You don't know if they're at the event or not. You don't know if they're in a studio on a monitor or at the actual event, right? They pipe in, they mix in the crowd sounds. That's not hard to do. And some broadcasters have become so proficient at that their bosses are going, well, what do we need to put him on the road for?
Right.
People listening don't know if he's at the game or not. They don't know. They don't care. Right? They're getting whatever. And with the exception of the time that Joe Bowen called the goal in Tampa by Morgan Riley, when it was actually, I think, John Tavares or whatever.
Yeah, an overtime winner to move on. That's one of those ones that should have been played on highlights for a long time. And poor Joe's got it wrong because he's sitting 1,000 miles away.
Exactly. So there's your instance of, see, it burned you.
Yeah.
But beyond that, the money that they save, I guess, and that's the future. So like I said, with Dean and Gord, they're probably saying to themselves, we're never going back. They're never going to change their mind.
Once it's done, once you've pulled the Band-Aid off.
Say, Gord, we made a mistake, Gordy, we made a mistake, Dean. You're going back on the road.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. And that's got to be awfully difficult, because when you can see the writing on the wall, when you can see that they've taken away your responsibilities, they've taken away things that you had, that you took for granted was part of the job. In any job, it's got to be really tough, right?
Absolutely. You've been very generous with your time here. I always appreciate when you come on. Like we said, the book is called Madness, the Rise and Ruin of Sports Media by Mark Hebscher, a Canadian sports broadcasting legend. I enjoyed the hell out of it. I blew through it in a hurry. Like I said, as interesting as it was amusing. So a lot of events that we all remember hearing about as sports fans, you kind of get taken behind the scenes here a little bit, or the curtain gets pulled back on how that was covered or what was really happening behind it, plus some silly and some fun stuff too. A great read. We will link to a couple places where you can pre-order it in the show notes. Mark, I appreciate this, man. Thank you so much for your time.
Hey, Matt, thanks. Did I do better than James Duthie, or did I do as good as James Duthie?
Sure. Yeah, no, James is, that was fun to have him in here on Friday. And I don't know, you crushed him, right? Why not we just throw it out there that way? And
I bought his book. I hope he buys mine.
There you go. Yeah. It's a busy month for Canadian sports books. Andy Petrillo's got one coming out. She'll be on the show here later this week. That should be fun as well to talk about that one.
I reference her in my book. She's wonderful.
You took a lot of time in one of your chapters there to kind of, again, take us through the history of some of the early women sports reporters and how difficult that was for them and how we've gotten to where we are now and how far there still is to go. But she was absolutely one of the names you referenced there. Quite flattering.
Yeah. And you know what? I mean, it's like, when Christmas time comes, right? It's like, what do sports fans, okay, give me a good book, right?
100%.
Nothing better than a good sports book for Christmas time.
Yeah.
And that's why, at this time of the year, everybody comes out with their, I'm sure there's lots of hockey books that are out there, right?
Sure.
And I'll be honest with you, for me, it's easy because I'll buy the latest sports books, and they're stocking stuffers, they're giveaways for, all my friends who are sports people and family. So it does make a good Christmas gift. And like you said, I think it's a pretty easy read because you don't have to read it start to finish. You can pick and choose your chapters.
Sure. Yeah.
If you want to read about Wide World of Sports or Howard Cosell, you don't have to start at the beginning. There's no obligation there either.
It's a really fun read. I enjoyed it quite a bit. Congratulations on it and the release on November 4th. And we'll be keeping
the audiobook too, Matt.
That's great. Are you? Did you do the read?
The audiobook. Yeah. I tell you what, I don't want to say I've never. The hardest thing I've ever had to do.
It's exactly what Duthie said as well.
Was the audiobook.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Duthie's, it's you know what it is? If I recorded something at 9:30 in the morning on the original take, and we had to do another take or we had to do some editing, I had to do the editing at the same time of day, because my voice at 9:30 a.m. sounds different than my voice at 3 in the afternoon.
Sure, yeah.
I didn't know this, but the engineer's like, "Well, you hear that?" I go, no. He goes, "Well, that's different. We have to make it sound like you read the whole thing in one take."
And you're just sitting there reading your own words and take this and can you emphasize this a little more and we need to do it over. I'm told there's a few of you I've spoken to said it's just hell.
Ooh, it's hard. It is hard, but I think the finished product was worth it because, it is my stories and all that type of thing. But just a couple of times where it's like, "Mark, you slurred your word here." I did. I would listen to it going, "What's the matter with that?" And these are, look, we're audio engineers. People are going to be listening to this.
Right.
You got to say it. You can't say something. You have to say something. I said, "What?" "Yes, you slurred it. You said something good. Something good." I go, "I don't talk like that. That's not the way I speak." "Yes, but that's the way it has to." Okay. All right.
A couple 100 pages of that. It's somebody in your ear correcting the way you've spoken your whole life. So we will link to that too, an audiobook. There's a Kindle book version. There is the hard copy, of course. We'll put it all in the show notes. Once more, thanks, Mark Hebscher. I appreciate it.
Oh, Matt, my pleasure, and thanks for having me.
All right, that was fun. Mark and I had never met before and never chatted before. This was his first time on the show. And he is kind of that guy that you remember him being, no different than he was on talk radio all those years ago and on Sportsline, just not afraid to tell you what he thinks and how it is. And he's certainly got a career to back it up, worth of insights and experiences to kind of form those opinions from. So the book is a terrific read. I am finished that one. I blew through it in just a few days, to be honest with you. I really enjoyed it. We will link to it in the show notes at tallcanaudio.com, as well as the book I mentioned off the top, or the books I mentioned off the top by James Duthie and Andy Petrillo. If you're interested in checking those ones out, you can do so at our Amazon affiliate links. And if you do, it'll help out the show. You'll pay the same price you were always going to, but they'll give TCA a little kickback for sending you their way. So we'd love it if you plan on checking any of these out. If you'd use our links in the show notes at tallcanaudio.com or in the podcast app you're listening to me on right now. That's going to do it for today. Stick around for Andy Petrillo later this week. And much more to come, as always, on the Tall Can Audio podcast. Thanks for listening. My name is Matt Robinson. We'll see you next time.
I thought it generally sucked. I didn't think it was a specific suck. I thought it was like an all-encompassing type of suck. So, we're going to try and rectify that. But for right now, I'm going to be pretty pissed about it.